Hi there, I'm Uncle Joel, and this is Pen and Reel, where I'll take a look at media issues not from the perspective of a fan or consumer, but as a writer and filmmaker. For those of you that don't know, I recently moved from California to England in order to be with my beautiful wife, which has all kinds of changes that comes with it. One of the things that is different is my movie-going experience. Back home, I would normally go see most big movie releases on opening night with friends, geeking out and having lively discussions afterwards. Unfortunately, I've not yet established that kind of friendship group here in the UK, so my movie attendance has changed significantly. So instead of going on opening night, I saw the Rise of Skywalker the day after Christmas, while I was away in Northern Ireland visiting my wife's family. Hence the late video. That being said, I'm still mulling over my thoughts on the latest Star Wars film. I am torn on exactly how I feel about it. There are a number of things I liked about the movie, as well as things I can complain about. For this movie, I'm going to focus more on some of the complaints, but I want to make it clear up front that I did enjoy the film. I just think it could have been a lot better. If you watched my previous video, What's Next for Star Wars, you'll know I had a very different idea for where the series would go. While I much prefer my idea, I never really thought they would go that direction, so I won't hold that against them. I'm not going to judge the movie too much on what I think they should have done, but more on execution than anything. And in case you missed it in the title, I will not refrain from spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and care about spoilers, I suggest turning the video off and coming back after you watch the film. One thing to note before continuing. I actively avoid trailers. Somehow, I had managed to avoid seeing even a single trailer for The Rise of Skywalker. I did this for a few reasons, which I'll go into in a different video. But at the very least, it allows me to appreciate a movie for what it is, with no expectations or having anything spoiled. So I knew virtually nothing about Rise of Skywalker before seeing it, aside from the fact that it was the completion of the trilogy as directed by JJ Abrams. And right off the bat, I had complaints. There were two significant issues with the beginning of the movie that will likely grow easier to tolerate upon repeat viewings, but my initial viewing, it was difficult to appreciate. The first issue was Emperor Palpatine. That just came out of nowhere. To have the opening scroll talk about the signal from Palpatine, and then to have him appear in the opening scenes, felt out of left field. I feel the opening scroll would have been better used to talk about the dire situation of the Resistance, and then add a scene or two showing the mysterious signal's discovery. It would have felt more natural for me. As it was slightly jarring. There hadn't been any hint of the Emperor in the previous movies, aside from speculation about who Snoke was. And then all of a sudden, this movie was all about him from the opening moments. While this speaks to the lack of cohesion of the trilogy as a whole, at the very least Abrams could have presented it with a little more subtlety, and I would have been more accepting of it. And consider Return of the Jedi. Sure, the Emperor hadn't been in the previous movies, but he wasn't just all of a sudden the central focus from the opening seconds. I feel this movie could have greatly benefited from a similar approach. The second issue I had with the beginning of the movie was a matter of pacing. And honestly, when I think about it, most of the movie. It moved far too fast. Especially the first half of the movie. It just blazed along at lightning speed, barely allowing any downtime. Not that downtime is strictly necessary in every movie, but it didn't feel like that level of speed was necessary here. The word that I keep using is breathe. There was no chance for the characters to breathe. Aside from a few quick moments, none of the characters really had a chance to just be themselves and interact. This is okay for the ones you have established in the previous movies, but when you get new characters introduced, such as Zori or Babu Frick, it would be nice to have a little more time for them to interact without rushing to the next scene and just leaving them behind. Really though, as a whole, the movie felt too quick, with only a few select scenes allowed enough time to stretch out and explore what it was meant to be. Aside from these, the movie could have been twice as long with the same sequences, and I would have been much happier. Maybe split up into 2 films so nothing was rushed. Overall, I felt most of the scenes themselves were fine, but they deserved more. Take, for instance, the death of Chewie. This should have been a big, tragic moment, the weight of which carried through everyone. We should have felt it, had the gravity of the death linger. Instead, we get the reveal that he is alive only a few minutes later. In fact, the movie moves so fast that I have difficulty remembering a lot of it. That's never a good thing. Another problem I have with the movie is tied to one of the problems of The Last Jedi, and that is the issue of what matters and what doesn't. As I have heard others put it, a good sequel follows the rules of improv, specifically the yes and rule. In this, you take what you are given, no matter how little you like it, and you say yes and, taking what you were given and adding to it. So for instance, if I say, you're a wizard, you say yes and I'm a wizard who likes to ride bicycles. You play with it. You don't just dismiss it. With The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson essentially said no, but, throwing what he didn't like away and choosing to do his own thing. For instance, Snoke, Rey's parents, etc. For The Rise of Skywalker, I felt like Abrams went a middle road, saying yes, but he took what Johnson did, went with it, but corrected it. Okay, sure, Rey's parents were nobodies, but her grandfather... Yeah, Kylo Ren destroyed his mask, but then he turned around and fixed it. There are so many things that feel inadequate. Consider C-3PO's memory wipe. This could have been a big dramatic sequence with a very strong payoff, but instead they undercut the entire thing by having 3PO mention that R2 backs up his memories. As a result, when they show the mind-wiped 3PO meet up with R2, I instantly thought, okay, this is where his memory wipe gets restored. And sure enough, I was right. But imagine how it would have been had they simply left that line out. The sacrifice would be so much more dramatic, with no signs of hope. And then, when he meets up with R2, you're expecting R2 to be sad. But instead, he shocks his amnesiac friend into paralysis and hacks into his head. At which point it is revealed that R2 backs up his memories. This would have given a strong character moment for R2, which would have been quite moving. But instead we get, oh, okay, this is where his memory gets restored, as expected. The entire trilogy is just so disjointed. It doesn't play like a trilogy. It plays like a battle of wills between 2 completely opposing directors. It makes no sense to me how Disney can have such a strong grasp on Marvel with Kevin Feige, but they couldn't do the same with Star Wars. Maybe I do not have a good grasp on what Kathleen Kennedy does, but I feel like she, or someone, should have a stronger control over the films in order to maintain cohesion. Whether it is the case or not, this trilogy plays like there was no overarching plan, and I would be honestly surprised if there was. Now, I did enjoy the elements that they focused on the Force, specifically the connection between Kylo Ren and Rey. I feel like they did a great job with their Force connection sequences, with the spillover of one location into another. Not only were these well done, it showed the level of power at play in a very unique manner. It was also very pleasing that C-3PO had a more significant role to play than yet another cameo. One of the consistent issues I have had is the disregard for the legacy characters, to the point that they have brief appearances to say that they were there, but no significant role to play. Lando kind of falls into that category in this movie, as he appears for a few quick moments to add poignancy. He has more significance than C-3PO in the first 2 Disney Star Wars movies, but it felt artificial to me. Overall, there were a lot of things I liked about Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, but it was very flawed in ways that detract from my appreciation. This entire trilogy is strange, and honestly doesn't feel like a trilogy to me. Given the disparate execution, I can't be entirely certain how I feel about these movies. I really enjoy aspects of all three, and I dislike many aspects of each. And there are things I like about The Last Jedi better than the other two, while the other two feel more cohesive than The Last Jedi. My feelings are very mixed. What I can say is that I would love to see what JJ Abrams would have done if he had control of the entire trilogy. And I look forward to seeing what Rian Johnson does with his Star Wars trilogy if those plans ever come to fruition. But what do you think? I'm sure you all have strong feelings about different story points. Rey being a Palpatine, for instance. But what points do you feel were not developed well enough? Were there problems about how the story was told that you found frustrating or difficult? I'm not talking specific story points, but the method and the presentation. Was there anything you left out that you felt important or were hoping to see? Let me know down in the comments. I look forward to hearing what you think. And until next time, this is Uncle Joel saying, stay tangible.